Welcome back to the program. Joining me now for our political discussion, Labor MP Deb O'Neill and Liberal MP Ewen Jones. Thank you both very much. Welcome to the program. First to you, Deb O'Neill. The happenings in the chamber this morning, was this a stunt, a set-up by the government, as Tony Abbott suggests?
Well, the only stunt-like manoeuvres I could see was the rush for the door. I just think that this is a game playing in the extreme in a really important place. You know, people have higher expectations of the Parliament, and certainly I think the people of Dobell expect that their representative will be there representing them and not be told by Tony Abbott when he can and can't participate.
Was it game playing by Craig Thompson, though, voting with the opposition on this? He has voted in favour of gag orders 5 times since becoming an independent. Admittedly, they related to him, but is he playing games here?
Look, you know, perhaps we want to talk about the games here in Canberra, but what really matters on the ground out in the electorate's anything but this sort of behaviour. It just breeds further contempt for the Parliament. The reality is, you know, it's things like, am I going to be able to afford to support my kid through school? What does it mean for me that I'm going to get assistance and money into my bank as a pensioner? These are the things that really matter to people, and I think while there's interest in what happened in the chamber this morning, there are far more vital things of interest to people in my electorate.
Ewen Jones, the opposition leader, running out of the chamber. Is this a bad look for Tony Abbott?
No, I think what it was a stunt. It was set up by the Leader of the House and the member for Dobell to put the leader of the opposition in a position. We've taken
what evidence do you have of that?
I've got no evidence other than the absolutely blindingly obvious. You can't say to me that Craig Thompson has suddenly discovered a conscience, that he's suddenly saying that all these, that he believes in free speech and all these things that happen. To do that this morning, it just smells of politics, and I think that the way that you've seen the vision there, the way that the Leader of the House reacted was very much politics was the game at play.
What do you think this vision is going to do for the overall image of you guys who sit in the chamber, Ewen?
Well, I tend to agree with Deb. I think it is a distraction. But once again, I mean, we have said very, very strongly that we will not rely on the tainted vote of Craig Thompson. We simply won't do it. So we will do everything we can to make sure that not only do we take one person out to even it up, but we will restore the balance by doing that. I think that's the principle that Tony Abbott has made, and the person who should have been running out of the chamber and away from the votes of Craig Thompson was in fact Julia Gillard.
When Tony Abbott was asked about this this morning, he said that he absented himself from the chamber. He was then asked about that several more times because he didn't quite absent himself from the chamber. Some in the gallery here have suggested that Mr Abbott was stretching the truth, but I suppose, Deb O'Neill, the point is here, he was trying to get out. Does that matter?
Well, stretching the truth, you know, what's new about that, sadly?
So you think he was stretching the truth?
Well, we've had, a claim here that with no evidence base for why it was a game. But the reality is that these sorts of stunts that we're seeing the Leader of the Opposition pull, like dramatic footage all of the time, this negativity, and it's a dangerous climate that he's trying to create all of the time, is simply a distraction from what real people want us to be doing down here in this place. People look to the Australian Parliament, and I know how I feel every day when I drive up in a car and have a look at the flag. I know I'm here to do good work for the people in my electorate. All of this is a distraction, and it takes away from the credibility of the institution here, and I think at times it's enough of this.
Well, one last question before we do move on to other more pressing matters. But Ewen Jones, Craig Thompson last week pleaded to be left alone. He's very much put himself in the spotlight today, and probably ensured that he will be at the top of news bulletins and papers today and tomorrow. What do you make of that?
Well, I just think we should give the guy some space. But when he does put his chin out there, I think he is inviting people to take a whack at it. Those are the sorts of things that we do. I would hope that. As I said, I don't have any evidence that it was put up to it today, but gee, it smells of politics. It really does, and I would hope that we are not playing politics with this poor bloke.
All right, well, let's move on. Today, in a speech at a mining conference today here in Canberra, Mining Week, which is held every year, Tony Abbott admitted that it will be difficult to unravel some elements of the carbon tax, as he has promised to do. Let's have a listen.
The government talks to journalists about how they are Abbott-proofing all of the changes that they've made. people-proofing is effectively what they're doing. They are trying to prevent the next elected government from undoing the harm that they have done. And there is no doubt that there are measures associated with both the mining tax and the carbon tax that will be difficult to undo.
Ewan Jones, is Tony Abbott setting us up so that he can say, well, sorry, I wanted to, but I can't get rid of major elements of this carbon tax?
Not at all, David. What he is saying is that is very much the truth. We've got a government that promised no carbon tax and in fact is going ahead and doing it. We have got a leader of the opposition that has been all the way through from before the last election saying that we will not have a carbon tax and that we will do these things by direct action. We will have these things, but so we have promised that we will repeal it. What Tony Abbott is saying is that with the measures that the government are doing, not for the good of the economy or for the good of the Australian people, but for the sake of politics, to make it as hard as humanly possible for the coalition to repeal these acts. But make no mistake, we will repeal the carbon tax and everything that goes with it.
Is it fair play, Deb O'Neill, to be, as Tony Abbott described it, Abbott-proofing the carbon tax?
Oh, I think we need to Abbott-proof the country and win the next election and make sure we can get on with the job of delivering jobs for Australian workers
but
and
on
Australian
the carbon
families.
tax specifically?
Well, we're actually making sure that money is going to assist families and pensioners. You know, there are 52,000 pensioners on the Central Coast who'll be getting payments this week or in the coming week to help them manage their costs. We believe that they will be able to manage that, and we just want to give them a hand. That's what Labor does. We look to share the benefits of this boom that's happening. You know, we've had Mr Abbott talk about the mining tax. What he wants to do is make sure that those who have the most money in the country, the richest woman in the world, doesn't have to really pay a fair share of tax. He would actually take money away from pensioners and families.
But at risk of wading into the hypothetical, if Tony Abbott was elected Prime Minister, it would be off the back of a carbon tax campaign. Would that not be a mandate for him to roll it back?
Well, he seems to think so. The reality is that, you know, there are new industries that are growing up. There are great industries in my area.
You don't think it would be a mandate?
No, look, he says he's going to do it. Some people will believe what he's going to say, and you know, it's a very dangerous thing that he's doing. The reality is we are making sure that as we transition to a clean economy and all the jobs, all the new jobs that brings, we are helping ordinary Australians. People in Woy Woy, Australia Street Umina, are getting money into their accounts today to help them to make that transition because we believe in the future. We're talking a positive message. In contrast, we've got negative, negative, negative. You know, in that speech to the miners today, it was, you know, there are problems on the horizon. I saw the caption, and that's all we get from the Leader of the Opposition, all the problems and all the negatives.
You and Jones, a chance to respond to that?
Well, can I just say, the one thing that Deb can't get through is that, you know, we're both first-termers, so she'll be able to go to an election with actually a platform that they may possibly keep with. The positive thing for Tony Abbott, for mine, is that he has said there won't be a carbon tax. He'll go to the election with saying that there will be no carbon tax, that we will repeal it. I don't think there's anything more positive than a man can say as to say one thing before an election and actually follow through after the election and deliver. Those are the things that Tony Abbott will do. He warned before the last election that, you know, come hell or high water, they will bring in a carbon tax, and it's been proven correct.
Well, the thing
all the
is,
way through this.
If Tony takes away the carbon tax, let's remember that we've got Take Away Tony putting his hand in the pocket of every Australian family and pensioner to take away their money.
A tax cut
and a tax take, and then he wants to put his hand in some sort of Triffid-like gesture. The tentacles of Tony will move in and take away another $1,300, and then he's going to give it to those who are polluting.
And just a quick response before we move on.
A refund, a tax refund or a cash bribe for a tax increase is not a tax cut, it's a tax con. It's as simple as that.
Okay, well, we've got another couple of topics I want to get through. The migrant workers deal, first of all. A solution seems to have been found within the caucus yesterday that essentially Chris Bowen, the Minister, will have to explain any sort of decisions he makes in the future to a subcommittee of caucus members. Why wasn't that sorted out last week? And do you admit that this really looked on the surface to be a pretty sloppy process?
Look, I think it's we need to be mindful all the time that in the Labor Party we really focus on jobs. You know, we started when we hit the global financial crisis. We went to what do we believe? What's the most important thing to do here? Make sure we keep jobs, and we invested in that. The EMA is another commitment of Labor where there's a $2 billion project that we're going to make sure that there's an opportunity for all of the jobs to come to Australians, 6,700. But then if there are 1,700 additional workers who are needed, workers who want to come from, you know, maybe countries like my parents came from, Ireland, to come out and work, to develop their skills, to finish their trades, and then move on back to home and send that money home. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but this is something the opposition supports as well. But the process itself has been called into question, and in fact some in the opposition today have said that that process is sending a bad signal to investors overseas, and it represents a sovereign risk.
Oh, look, I just think we've got all that miserly talk, all that whinging negativity just keeps on coming at us from the opposition. The reality is this is 8,000 jobs. That's a great problem to have.
Do you agree with your colleagues, Ewen Jones, that this is a sovereign risk, or is that taking it a bit too far?
No, very much so, David. I think, at the end of the day, what we've got is they've never met anything that they can't lump more red tape onto. Go to another committee, add some more cost, make it even harder all the way through.
It's an internal committee, though. It won't really add any more cost.
Mate, and they'll sit there and they'll laugh and they'll laugh and they'll laugh. We're talking about looking after jobs. We know whose jobs they're looking after. The minister is there to make the decision. He's made it with the Minister for Resources, and the Prime Minister was briefed all the way through this, but the announcement happened to come while she was in a meeting with some unionists, and therefore it's hit the fan, and there's been all sorts of trouble come from there, and that's the reason we've got this committee.
But a sovereign risk? No. Back to the question, is it a sovereign risk really?
Can I tell you, I'm from Townsville. We have lots of coal mines that are in the pipeline out there. There's nothing actually been digging in the ground. There is no infrastructure out there at the moment. You put too much regulation. You make sure that you make it so hard for business to get ahead. You make it so hard for business to do anything in this country that they will look elsewhere. We do not hold a monopoly on resources in the world. It is a global game. We make it so hard for people to get these things up and running that these things will disappear overseas if we don't watch out.
And here we have that negativity. Okay, we've got a $2 billion project. It's not that hard. Business wants to make money. Okay, this is an investment in the country. They want to do this. There's $2 billion on the table. There's 8,000 jobs. There's training opportunities. There's hundreds of apprenticeships. And I had the Minister for Workplace for Employment come to my seat quite recently. And there were two young guys who were so excited to be able to go to a jobs board and find out where they might get an apprenticeship as a mechanic. Having a jobs board that people from all over Australia can have a look at and say, well, I'm ready to go on the adventure of
sounds like
going off.
Doesn't it?
Well, no, it's an opportunity to go out and get yourself a job and have the great adventure and live the dream that Australia offers to workers. The type of Australia that the Labor Party is about is offering opportunity to workers and also acknowledging that business is a vital deliverer of those opportunities. We work with both in a positive way. Get rid of the negativity.
Okay. But just one quick one, David.
Sure.
He's going to sit there and say the Minister made the confident decision. The Minister came out and said the right thing. But as soon as he has, the party has jumped all over him, pulled him back in, smashed him round the head, dragged him through kicking and screaming and said, look, we're going to have to do some more of this stuff because Paul Howes came out and heaven forbid the Labor Party should upset the AWU.
I love the reporting of the caucus by people who aren't there. You know, that's just such an incorrect representation.
I just want to finish the program on a much more serious note, and that is Syria. Australia has kicked out the Syrian diplomats that have been here, and many other countries, including the United States and Britain, and Italy and France have also followed. Now, I just want to ask you both, is this the appropriate course of action, and will it make a difference, Deb O'Neill?
Well, I don't think that any Australian who opened a newspaper this week and saw that devastating image of those small bodies lying out there on the floor. It's devastating to see things like that, and our common humanity always rises in those sorts of situations. You know, mothers and children and fathers and sons, they see those images and they translate into something very, very real. I think that the action that the Foreign Minister has taken is very judicious, very cautious, and it is part of a chorus of voices around the world saying this is enough. This is a very powerful signal to dismiss a diplomat from a country.
Bob Carr has also flagged further sanctions, perhaps an arms embargo or a referral to the criminal court. Does the opposition support that as well?
I think we'll be working very closely with the government on this one. This is a terrible situation, David. We don't want this to be happening, and I wish there was something. I wish this action by the government was a silver bullet. The fact is, it isn't. There's some very serious issues over there, and we will be working bipartisan on this. It's a terrible situation. I think we've got to treat it with the respect and the reverence that it is due.
Yes, and I think the Australian people expect that, and they'll absolutely have that here.
And on that bipartisan note, we are out of time. Deb O'Neill, Ewen Jones, thank you very much for both of your times. This edition of Lunchtime Agenda. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks.
And of course, our hearts and thoughts do go out to everyone in Syria that is going through hell, it must be. We're going to take you now to